Hi, everyone. Welcome to Bible Discoveries, the weekend show. My name is Corie, and that's Matlock. Hey, Matlock.
Oh, hey.
Just throwing it over, just spicing it up.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I'm here. How you doing?
You are here. Okay, what?
No,
What's this?
I got a question for you this week.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so what are we studying, actually?
Okay.
I just have no clue, because I have been involved here. No, I know. Go ahead.
Jeremiah 49.
Yeah.
To Ezekiel 11 was our assigned reading this week, Monday to Saturday. So Jeremiah, Lamentations, and Ezekiel. And then we get Psalm 99 to 103 on Sunday is what you are supposed to read. So we're going to be recapping that Jeremiah 49 to Ezekiel 11. And then Matlock, you have a question.
Well, yeah, so we have a viewer question here that pertains more to you. It's about history. It's from Bill88. And he asks, "Hi, Corie and Matlock. I enjoy your weekend show. I think it is amazing that Isaiah spoke about Cyrus's accomplishments 200 years before he was born. Is there any historical evidence about his upbringing and political ideas? How did he persuade the Medo-Persian Empire to go against the formidable Babylonians?"
Oh, yes. Yes.
The recap.
We will do that after the recap. There's quite a bit of information about Cyrus. So I'm excited about that.
It is a good question. Yeah.
All right. Let's recap Jeremiah 49 to Ezekiel 11. Matlock, please jump in with pearls of wisdom as we go. Or questions. Or you'll think about it?
I'll think about it.
Forcing Matlock to come along with us on our Bible recapping journey. Okay, I'll be curious to know how many of you are keeping up with your reading or if you're leaning on these to get you caught up. There's no shame either way. I'm just curious. Let me know. Okay, Jeremiah chapter 49. We're told that Ammon, the nation of Ammon, took over the land from the tribe of Gad, the Israelite tribe of Gad, after they were conquered by Assyria. And so this is a prophecy that their capital city of Rabbah, the Ammonites' capital city of Rabbah, will be destroyed and the Israelites will retake their territory. Edom, there's a prophecy about Edom being taken. Damascus, also called Aram or Syria, because Damascus was the capital city of Aram, but it's sometimes called Syria, will be destroyed. We're told Kedar and Hatzor. Now, these were nomadic tribes. This isn't referring to the city of Hatzor, but the tribe of Hatzor. They were living in the Arabian desert. We're told that Nebuchadnezzar is going to defeat them. Elam, a kingdom southeast of Babylon, will be destroyed and the people exiled, but they too will be restored in later days. That wraps up the prophecies of Jeremiah 49. Jeremiah 50, this prophecy is specifically for the big bad Babylonian Empire. Jeremiah prophesies that an alliance of people will destroy Babylon and Israel and Judah will be able to unite and travel back to Jerusalem to rebuild. I'm going to read you verses 6 and 7. It's God's description of Israel and Judah in the NIV. Here's what it says. "My people have been lost sheep. Their shepherds have led them astray and caused them to roam on the mountains. They wandered over mountain and hill and forgot their own resting place." We're also told that Babylon, it reveled in destroying God's people, and so they will be destroyed for their own evil. Jeremiah 51, the prophecy against Babylon continues into this chapter. This time the Medes are mentioned, and as we're going to discuss later on, it was an alliance between the Medes and the Persians that took Babylon. Sort of an alliance, if you can call it that. We'll get there. We learn at the end of chapter 51 that Jeremiah had sent a scroll with this long prophecy against Babylon to Babylon with an official of King Zedekiah. Maybe they were going from Zedekiah to Babylon with the yearly tribute. That would be my guess. But we're given the official's name that Jeremiah sent the scroll with. His name is Seraiah, son of Neriah. Now, this is interesting because Jeremiah's scribe Baruch, his father's name is also Neriah. So could Seraiah be Baruch's brother? Seraiah was to read the scroll of Jeremiah's prophecy out loud once he reached Babylon, then tie a rock to the scroll and throw it into the Euphrates River and say, "So will Babylon sink to rise no more because of the disaster I will bring on her, and her people will fall. Chapter 51 ends with the words of Jeremiah end here. And then there's still another chapter of Jeremiah. But that's where the prophet's words ends. So Jeremiah chapter 52 is a postscript, a PS. It records the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple and the walls, the records of looting, the Babylonians looting the temple. It lists more exiles to Babylon. And there's a record of Jehoiachin, king for 3 months, Jehoiachin of Jerusalem, being released from prison in Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar's son, Awal Marduk, or Evil Merodach. However, the English translations vary. But that's the end of Jeremiah.
So who wrote Jeremiah 52? Baruch? Or
Possibly.
do we know? Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, unclear.
Oh, wow.
Probably Baruch.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know who else would be around.
Could be a later editor.
Being killed. Yeah.
Could be a later editor.
Even in exile? Maybe in exile, they were just documenting everything that happened. It would have to be because they're documenting all the...
They documented the release of Jehoiachin, and that is accurate. So interestingly, a segment of the Babylonian Chronicle was randomly selected for translation, I think at the British Museum, and it ended up being the record of King Jehoiachin's release and rations. That is amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Because it verifies what Jeremiah 52 says happened to him.
So so these are the people in exile being like, look, everything Jeremiah prophesied did come true, right? And so that ratifies what you see this often in the prophets, where it's called 1 Samuel, and then like the end of 1 Samuel, he dies, and then there's 2 Samuel.
Yeah, yeah.
Like who's writing this? Anyways, maybe God, maybe Nathan.
Or like Deuteronomy recording the death of Moses after it says that Moses has been writing it this whole time. Well, it's probably Joshua who took over from Moses,
That's right? That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. No, I know. That's interesting, though.
All of those things. Okay, but then we do jump back into a work that was authored by the prophet Jeremiah, and it's Lamentations. So Lamentations is 5 poems, essentially. This is how I would describe it. 5 poems about the destruction of Jerusalem, specifically crying over, lamenting, mourning, remembering the destruction of Jerusalem. So Lamentations 1, Jerusalem is personified and laments her own fallen condition. Lamentations chapter 2, the Lord is given credit for Jerusalem's destruction. So the Babylonians did it, but it ultimately was the Lord. And the prophet begins to lament and mourn and calls for the city to cry out to God. And the city does cry out to God in Lamentations 2. In Lamentations 3, we get this personal perspective being taken out, describing the awful horrors of the wrath of God. And then there's hope. Verses 19 to 26 says this: I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. I well remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion. Therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord, which has been universally recognized as beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
You know, throughout church history, great is thy faithfulness.
It's a wonderful song. It's him, yeah.
Okay, Lamentations chapter 4, the destruction of Jerusalem is spoken of with vivid descriptions of the results of the siege of the city. So starvation, death, cannibalism of the dead. It's a very bleak chapter. And it connects the destruction of the city to the corruption of the prophets and priests. And it likens the prophets and priests to the blind and the unclean. So, the prophets, those who claimed to see spiritual truths, are blind. And the priests, those who claimed to be holy, to be set apart, to be other, to be clean, to be better than, are so unclean that the people living in squalor are telling them to go away because they're too unclean. And there's also, in Lamentations 4, a direct address to the nation of Edom to stop rejoicing over Jerusalem's fall, because she too will be destroyed. And then finally in Lamentations 5, there's a call, a cry out to God to save the people, to specifically remember the people. And that concept, the concept of remembering, God remembering, is used often of God. Like, think about in Exodus. This wasn't trying to say, like, oh, God has a faulty memory. He forgets things. But it's that saying functionally, he was not acting on their behalf. So to remember the people was to actively act or engage in helping or fixing or rescuing them. Lamentations 5 also describes some of the hardships and atrocities that were experienced by the captured Judeans at the hands of their captors. It's a brutal read. And that's the end of Lamentations. Okay, ready to jump into Ezekiel?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm just reading. Yeah, it's good.
Ezekiel's a wild ride.
Yes.
Are you ready for
We're
Ezekiel?
Oh my goodness.
Buckle up.
Are we going in?
We're going in.
To the depths?
Or the heights.
Oh,
of Ezekiel's visions. Okay,
Yeah.
Ezekiel chapter 1. We meet 30-year-old Ezekiel. He was a Judean exile, taken in the first wave of exiles with King Jehoiachin from Jerusalem. And in this chapter, Ezekiel has a vision, a very famous vision of the throne of God. And it's a throne that moves. So it's sometimes referred to as the chariot throne of God. So it has wheels that I will say sees all things, has eyes all around it. And there's cherubim, or 4 living creatures. They have human bodies with 4 faces: the face of a man, the face of a lion, the face of an ox, and the face of an eagle. They have 4 wings. With 2 of the wings, they cover their body, and with 2 wings, they fly. They fly in square formation with their wing tips touching. There's a vault like crystal. There's a throne like lapis lazuli. I don't know how you say that even. Help me out, geologists. God in human form is seen, and this vision ends with Ezekiel falling on his face when he sees the glory of God. Seems appropriate. Okay, maybe we could talk about some potential significance here.
okay.
Potential
Yeah,
significance from my angle. Okay,
Okay, go ahead.
because there's a lot of memes on the internet right now about how we think of angels versus how the Bible talks about angels. There's many different kinds of creatures that the Bible talks about. But potential significance here of God having a chariot throne or being mobile.
Yeah.
Was this meant to reinforce the concept that the temple had been decommissioned by God? Because rather than the presence of God meeting with people in the temple, he's now meeting with Ezekiel from this chariot throne. Maybe. God is also described specifically as approaching Ezekiel from the north. Now, in the contemporary work of the prophet Jeremiah, coming from the north is always associated with the enemy coming to destroy. So this is perhaps
The Gog and
Ezekiel
Magog language.
seeing
Yeah.
Ezekiel seeing that it is actually God coming against Jerusalem and Judah,
Right.
which goes along with what God says through all the other prophets, that I'm using Babylon to destroy, but it's actually me bringing judgment on your evil. Thoughts? I don't know. Let me know what you think. Ezekiel chapter 2. When we left Ezekiel in chapter 1, he was flat on his face. So God helps Ezekiel to stand up in chapter 2, and he calls him as a prophet, sent specifically to the rebellious of Israel, meaning the people of God, both Israel and Judah, because in exile, there's this reforming, this reunification of Israel and Judah that happens. They're all exiled now. Ezekiel is told not to be afraid of the people of God and also not to be rebellious like them. He's given a scroll of mourning and weeping, and he's told to eat it. So then in chapter 3, he eats it, and we're told it tastes like honey. Then he's told to go speak to Israel specifically, not to foreigners, and this is an indictment on Israel, because surely they would listen to you, God says.
Well,
What?
go ahead, no, continue.
To finish this chapter, God takes Ezekiel up with his chariot throne and brings him back to the exiles at the Kibar River where he was before this vision happened. And Ezekiel is told that he must tell these people God's warnings or their blood will be on Ezekiel's hands. So if I warn them through you and you choose to shut up, their blood's on your hands. So just tell them. God tells Ezekiel to go to the plain, and he sees the glory of God again, and Ezekiel has to go into seclusion until God opens his mouth. Like, he literally can't speak. So he has to, until God tells him, okay, now you can go talk to the people.
So, interestingly, a little something interesting, not that it's like, probably won't amount to anything more than just being interesting. When Ezekiel eats the scroll.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's as sweet as honey. This is what's described in Revelation, with John, Revelation chapter 10, eating the little scroll. But here, again, it says it tastes as sweet as honey, right? In both accounts. But in John's, it's as bitter to his stomach. But right after this, in Revelation, where he eats the little scroll, just like Ezekiel did, 2 witnesses go out. And one of those witnesses, right? We often talk about Enoch, Elijah, Moses. But they go out and they prophesy against the city. So it's very similar to this Ezekiel language of what has to happen. Anyways, that's it.
It's worth further study and thinking about how do the first few chapters of Ezekiel relate to those chapters in Revelation, because clearly there's a thematic and symbolic connection between the eating of the scroll.
Well, of course,
the consuming of the scroll.
You live not on just bread alone, but every word that comes out of the mouth of God. So literally, like, you're eating the word of God. But quite literally, that's what's being encapsulated here.
Yes.
But do you see what I'm saying?
But specifically, this scroll in Ezekiel contains mourning and weeping over the judgment of God.
That's right. But that's what Revelation's about. Yeah. So it's like, okay, so in this case, so that's why it's bitter to his stomach. So there's something about eating the word of God and it being, there's a relationship there that needs to be explored. Absolutely. I've yet to explore it, but I'm just throwing this out there.
Absolutely.
Anyways, go ahead.
Okay, Ezekiel chapter 4. Ezekiel is told to symbolize the coming besiegement of Jerusalem by making a clay model of the city. Arts and crafts, again, love it.
That's Revelation. That's 2 witnesses. I know, it's just interesting. Anyways.
He has to lay on his side outside, like beside the model of the city for a certain number of days. He had to measure his food, as in ration it out. And God tells him to cook his food using human waste as fuel. And to that, Ezekiel's like, now hold on. He resists. And God then allows him, he makes a concession, he allows Ezekiel to use animal dung. So this is like going to the extreme of how unclean it's going to be and how brutal the besiegement's going to be. And it was that brutal, but God gave Ezekiel a little bit of mercy here. Ezekiel chapter 5, Ezekiel has to shave his head, which was not done in the mourning practices of Israel. You can read about it in Deuteronomy. He has to shave his head and beard and divide it in thirds. The first third he burns, the second third he strikes with the sword, and the last third he scatters to the wind. But before he does so, he saves a few hairs back and tucks them into his garment, but then plucks out a couple of them and burns them.
Oh.
Yeah. So this is a very complex drama, but it's symbolic of what's going to happen to the population of Jerusalem. And it's explained in detail in Ezekiel chapter 5.
Not even the remnant will be spared. Like
some of the remnant is going to die as well. Yes. It's going to be burned. Ezekiel chapter 6. This continues the prophecy against Israel. This time specifically against Israel's mountains with their shrines and incense altars, saying they will be smashed. Ezekiel's told to stamp his feet, strike his hands together, and mourn and wail out, alas, alas, because of the prophecies. Ezekiel chapter 7. God, in first person, explains and poetically describes the destruction of Judah. Let me read you a few verses 20 to 21, NIV. They took pride in their beautiful jewelry and used it to make their detestable idols. They made it into vile images. Therefore, I will make it a thing unclean for them. I will give their wealth as plunder to foreigners and as loot to the wicked of the earth, who will defile it. So the thing they loved and tainted with false worship will be the thing that invites their destruction. The enemy will destroy them to get at that very thing, to get at their wealth. Ezekiel chapter 8. Ezekiel gets taken up by the hair, so it's grown back by this point in Ezekiel 8, and he gets taken to the Jerusalem temple in a vision, and he sees the unnamed idol that they had set up in the temple of God. And they have decorated the interior of the temple with animals and with insects, and there were more idols. And there were women mourning for Tammuz. We know that Tammuz was a god whose death was mourned yearly with the vegetation. So it was like a seasonal, agricultural god. And there were men in Jerusalem worshiping the sun. In Ezekiel chapter 9, we have God has servants mark the foreheads of those who were mourning over what was going on, over these evil practices, saying that those people would be spared, but everyone else would be killed indiscriminately. It's brutal when you read it in Ezekiel chapter 9. And we've got to remember, this is a vision of God's judgment through the Babylonians, but it's speaking specifically to what the evil Babylonians will do. They will indiscriminately and brutally murder all in the city of Jerusalem once the siege is broken. What God is saying here is that he is going to move to save those who mourn over the evil that they're witnessing in their day-to-day lives. And this rescue happens partially, we're told, through the first exile. For example, that Ezekiel had been a part of, and partially through God's miraculous provision, like in the case of Jeremiah and Baruch and Ebed-Melech, who we learned back in the book of Jeremiah, were captured in Jerusalem after the siege was broken, but were not killed and were actually let go. Okay, a couple more chapters left here. Ezekiel 10. After this sort of cleansing of the temple, meaning the destruction of the temple, God's presence leaves. It leaves the temple. And Ezekiel again describes the cherubim or the four living creatures. And Ezekiel 11, God brings Ezekiel to the east gate of the temple where there were 25 men, leaders of Jerusalem, giving the people evil advice. And God has him prophesy against those 25 men. And as he's doing it, one of the men drops dead in the vision. And Ezekiel stops prophesying. He falls face down and he cries out to God, basically, please stop. He says, alas, sovereign Lord, will you completely destroy the remnant of Israel? God promises then and there to bring back scattered Israelites to come and take away remaining idolatry in the land. God's presence leaves Jerusalem and it rests on the Mount of Olives. And that's the very ominous end of Ezekiel chapter 11. So you can see why the true prophets of God at this point in time are not going to be really popular.
Yeah, but it leads the way because it's talking about how a new heart and new spirit is going to come. And then in Ezekiel 36, it happens, right? Before the new temple is constructed in the in Ezekiel chapter 40 and onwards. Which is all very interesting, the timing and the pattern of how it all works. So if we just look at the order of the events that take place, sometimes it's just helpful just to, what's good about these summaries is that you can break down just the raw order of something happening, because so much misunderstanding comes from not just breaking down raw order. Because then you can see, oh, this goes to there, then that happens. And then you can just see very plainly what's happening on the great meta-narrative of it all, as opposed to just this, oh, what does this section say? What does this section say? Then piecing together two different sections out of order, right? That disorderliness just leads to misinterpretation and confusion. But no, this is all very interesting. The cherubim, this whole wheels within a wheel thing. I know everyone wants me to say UAPs and UFOs, but we're not going to go there today.
Aliens?
Aliens. It's not aliens. Everyone wants me to go there, but we know. But we're not going to go there. Anyways, but I just think it's really interesting because here you have something where you have like it's like wheels overlapping with wheels in this weird, like kind of like a gyroscope-ish way. And but at the very end, it says these angels that are by these wheels, and God's hovering over the cherubim, right? Kind of like the ark. But then each one of them went straight forward in their own direction. So this,
according to the direction of the wheels, right?
Yes.
Like we have to think from an ancient context.
Yes.
Of wheels for them weren't spaceships; they weren't flying saucers.
Yes.
They were chariots, right?
Yes.
Like we see the purpose of the cherubim, the cherubim wheels are movement. It is movement.
Yes, and they all go their different directions.
Yes.
So the wheels have a purpose behind
yes.
it. So you think about processions, and you think about moving the ark, transporting the ark, and then you see how the Spirit of God leaves the temple, right? But then he's going to put a new heart and a new spirit into mankind, into all those who seek after him, kind of thing. So you see that this is what's coming here. So, so the glory of God, which hovers above the mercy seat, right, is coming to, a person near you. Like it's coming, right? It's coming, right? Is this idea. Anyways, so there's something else that's deeper that's happening here. And of course, it's the throne room of God. Now, here's a question for you, which I was just thinking about, but not really meditating on, just kind of passing thought. This chariot-like language is used to describe the wheels within the wheels, and Ezekiel being pulled out, basically not teleported, but essentially in his vision teleported to like a time and a place to prophesy. So now you think about this. Now compared to Elijah, when he's taken up in the chariot of fire, would that chariot look anything like this? Like what's the descriptions? Are they similar enough that you could be like, well, like it's actually similar to this chariot that's described in Ezekiel? What do you think?
So I think that the chariots, plural, that we read about when Elijah is taken up into heaven, he's actually taken up in the whirlwind. And Elisha says, my Lord, the chariots and the horsemen of Israel. So I think, from my understanding, you guys let me know what you think, I think Elisha is actually seeing a vision of the army of God rather than the chariot throne of God. Right. And I think Ezekiel is seeing the chariot throne of God because that's what he's describing. He sees even God, like the glory of God.
Right.
But Elisha doesn't say like, oh, the glory of God. He says the chariots and the horsemen of Israel.
Yeah, right.
So we've got like the chariots of fire, like in our cultural memory now. But when you look really closely at how it's described, he's taken up in a whirlwind. Not that there wasn't a chariot there was.
Oh yeah.
Elisha saw something, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that would be my thoughts on that. I do, but I mean, I wasn't there, so. But I think Ezekiel was seeing something a little bit different.
No, yeah, I think so too. Okay, that's great.
But even the concept of chariot is like it's kingly and it's military as well.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think from the ancient mindset, I think you would be hard pressed to say otherwise.
Yeah.
They were used in military and they were used for kings, but not normally for everyday stuff.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. No, I don't really have much more to say on this. Like we could. The problem is if you get into anything with Ezekiel, it's a whole hour conversation. So I'm like, is there anything that's small here that I can bring up? That's like
rabbit trails pretty well, doesn't
that's
it?
That's what I'm saying. So I think that we got time. You're gonna go over Ezekiel again next week.
Yeah, we still have a few weeks in Ezekiel, actually, I think.
Yeah. So we have time. So, Corie, do you have anything else that's on your mind?
Do you want to jump to the question?
Let's
and then
do it.
maybe you can think of other things from Ezekiel that you want to say before we close up?
I agree. Okay, Corie. So here's the viewer question from again. To reiterate it from Bill. Bill asks, "Hi, Corie Matlock. I enjoy your weekend show. I think it is amazing that Isaiah spoke about Cyrus's accomplishments 200 years before he was born. Is there any historical evidence about the upbringing and political ideas of Cyrus, of course? And how did he persuade the Medo-Persian Empire to go against the formidable? I can't even say that word.
It's a weird word. Formidable.
Formidable. You can't do it sometimes. Some tongue twisters get me. The Babylonians. I was afraid to say it. I was like, I'm gonna blow this. I saw it coming. There's some words.
We'll just dub over your voice.
Yeah.
Formidable.
We'll give it to Brandon. Formidable. Yeah. No. Once I get in a pattern of saying it wrong,
now it's over.
I had to wait a week. Come back to the word a week from now. It's going to come out my sermon. It's going to blow.
It's
Corie,
over.
What do you think?
Okay. Yes. Okay. So there are, in terms of, we don't have history specifically related to his birth and upbringing, except that we do have legends recorded by the Greek historian Herodotus about his birth. But we do know that he was a product of a marriage alliance between his father, the king of Persia, and his mother, who was a Median princess. So his father is Cambyses the First. I might not be, there's all sorts of different ways to pronounce these kings' names, but yeah, his mother was a Median princess. His father was king of Persia, Cambyses the First. So he was born of this marriage treaty between the two nations, this political alliance. Now, Cyrus came to the throne of his father. Naturally, his father died, and then he took the throne of Persia in 559 BC. But he still had the blood of the Medes in him, and something changed for him politically when Nabonidus or Nabonidus, however you want to say that, king of Babylon at the time, makes a treaty with Cyrus in, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget, 556 BC. And so that treaty was really significant because Nabonidus had a treaty with the Medes. But now that he switched and made a treaty with the Persians, Cyrus then had an open door to go conquest against the Medes. So he took them. He, by force, took the kingdom of the Medes and created the Media-Persian Empire, historically also just called the Persian Empire, sometimes the Achaemenids. This is where I need a week to say this. Whatever you were saying, Malak, I need a week. The Achaemenid Empire. Why is that so hard for me to say always? I just call it the Persian Empire or the Media-Persian Empire.
Half the words in the English language. I can't even do it. Yeah.
English is hard.
Yeah.
Words can be hard sometimes.
No, yeah.
But yeah, so he forms this empire, and he's kind of the perfect person to do it because he has the blood of the Median kings also coursing through his veins, right? So he can claim to be the rightful ruler of this area. So this is how he got his start. And he had empire building on the mind right away. We know this because he goes for the Medes to create his empire, but then he immediately starts campaigning and building the empire. So the first, he takes, for example, the Anatolian kingdom of Lydia and Ionia, and then turns and looks towards Babylon and the Babylonian Empire in 539 BC. He takes it. Now, he didn't have to convince the Media-Persian Empire to back him because he already had them. He had already taken them by force and created them. But the Babylonian Empire had been in a stage of weakening. And we actually see this reflected in the biblical book of Daniel. We're going to get there. But Babylon is taken in one night while the king is having a drunken festival. So history also tells us that the empire, the Babylonian Empire, had weakened to such a state that it actually wasn't a difficult thing for Cyrus to take over. Now, in terms of like his ideology, we do have the Cyrus cylinder, which is so interesting to look at because on the one hand, it confirms the biblical account, and this is what everyone focuses on, which is good to focus on. It confirms the fact that Cyrus made an edict that allowed the Israelites to go back to Israel to rebuild Jerusalem, specifically to rebuild the temple, to reestablish Yahweh worship in Judah, in Israel. But it says more than that as well. It speaks to the policy of Cyrus. So Cyrus saw himself, or at least politically positioned himself, as he says that the god of Babylon, that Marduk, was not pleased with how the Babylonian king Nabonidus was serving him. And so he decommissioned Nabonidus and called Cyrus. It actually says, the Cyrus cylinder says that Marduk took Cyrus by the hand, Why this is interesting to me is because in Isaiah chapter 45, God says, no, Cyrus, I will take you by the right hand. I have called you to a task. So interesting. So Cyrus claims to be this ultimate worshiper of Marduk. And he also recognizes that there are territorial gods. There's a pantheon of gods. He may have been Zoroastrian, but he sees that he believes, according to the Cyrus Cylinder, it seems like he believes that there's a pantheon of gods, and he is going to, under his reign, under his rule, all of those gods will be appropriately worshipped. They will be appropriately taken care of by these people. And he says the problem with the Babylonian Empire is that they did not allow the people, the exiled people, to worship their gods appropriately. Not on my watch. He wants the other gods to pray to Marduk and Nabu of Babylon for him to establish his reign and his rule. So he does allow the Israelites to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple, but it's a policy that he has all over his empire for all of these exiled peoples to do. And he directly claims to have, I can't remember which gods, but he directly claims to have rebuilt the sanctuaries of 2 other gods while allowing all these other exiled peoples. This is not a problem for the Bible at all, because in Isaiah chapter 45, God actually says when he's talking of Cyrus, though you do not acknowledge me. So before Cyrus even was, Isaiah had already said, he's not going to acknowledge Yahweh, but God is still going to use him as a tool to reestablish worship in Jerusalem.
Cool.
Yeah. So I think...
Yeah, that's good.
I think I answered that question. If you have any more, Bill, let me know.
Yeah. No, that's very good. The Zoroastrianism, I can't remember. I always say it wrong.
It's so hard to say.
I know, because it's still around today. There's people still adhere to it. Anyways, but it's been many years since I've looked into that. But it's funny that you brought it up. I wasn't expecting that.
Well, we know that the later kings of the Persian Empire were that. They did adhere to that. I think like Xerxes, one of the Dariuses. Right. But there is debate over whether Cyrus should be seen as properly that or not. More records would help, but.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because they have a value. It's more like it's almost more theoistic, where it's a good and evil or like equal opposites. Mm-hmm. If I recall correctly, I might, but maybe mistake. It's been many years. But yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, it's interesting to think that God still, despite whether you acknowledge it or not, this is kind of why I use this argument when against the Canaanites, when the Canaanites were coming in to, when the Israelites were coming in to wipe out the Canaanites as a judgment against them because their iniquity was full. One big thing is that, like, look, God could use any nation to do this, but because Israelite are the people of God and they're following God's instructions, they just know about it. And then they won't, and if they follow God, they won't be judged because they're following God. But then they ended up not following God. All these other things. But yeah, when it comes to the judgment of God, like, God's still sovereign over the whole world. And whether you know better or not, it's irrespective. So it's like there's more responsibilities and accountabilities when you do know and you do have a relationship with God, because now you're in the know, so to speak. Like the Israelites were. So they had a higher responsibility and accountability towards God. But long story short is that in terms of judgments, in terms of God's sovereignty over the nations, it doesn't really make a difference whether we acknowledge God or not. He's still going to use it. It does make a difference in terms of how you worship him and your own salvation, but just in terms of how things play out.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like God's will is going to be accomplished one way or the other.
That's right.
It's a very interesting thought, and it's in our culture today. Obviously, it's harder to speak to the culture that Ezekiel is a part of, but in our culture today, everyone has an opinion on what's going on politically in the world. Everyone has a comment. But we so often forget that God has a plan.
Yes.
And there is such hope in that, where in the face of devastating evil that undoubtedly happens, don't have to look far to see it, that God still has a plan and that he will still judge. And
Yes.
it's thinking on those things
Yes.
is necessarily humbling for us.
Yes.
And I think we should all do more of it. I
Yeah.
think we should all political commentators are great. But if that's all you're ever hearing, if they're just giving you your opinions and that's all you're ever hearing, it's the same with Christian commentators. And I know we are in that category. Technically, we're here helping, trying to encourage you to read through the Bible. But we should not be the only voice that you shouldn't be getting your opinions from us. You should be humbling yourself before God and reading his word and thinking about things and remembering that he ultimately has a plan for the nations, even the evil of the nations. He will bring to judgment, and he will use for the good of those who love his name.
Yeah.
He will grow his kingdom one way or the other.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's good.
Anyway, there's great hope in that.
Yeah,
There's
I
great
think so
hope.
too.
Struggle and hope. Okay, do you have anything else that you want to
I'm
add?
done.
Okay, guys, you know the drill. Comment section down below on YouTube. Let us know what you thought about this episode. If you have questions about this episode or for future episodes for us to talk on. If you're listening on a different app, BibleDiscoveryTV.com. Shoot us an email. We'd love to read your comments, and we'd love to put your questions on the show. Until next week, happy reading and studying.